Bilis tayo. So, nung nakaraan ay we discussed pinakuloy natin discussion yung genealogy of Esau. At kasunod doon ay the genealogy of Jacob, which is 37 to chapter 50, verse 26. So, kung nakikita niyo sa screen, yung title ay This is what become of Jacob or Toledot. Sa iba ay this is the generation of Jacob. So we know Jacob is the son of Isaac. At ang kanyang kapatid ay si Esau. Ito yung the first cycle ay chapter 37 to chapter 41. And this is about the story of Joseph, the testing of Joseph. We know that Jacob has 12 sons. At isa sa mga anak niya ay si Joseph. Si Joseph yata pangalawa, no? Pangalawa sa bunso. Si Benjamin yung bunso. No? So he was among the 12 sons, siya yung paborito ng ng tatay. So at dahil dito, Joseph is loved by Jacob but hated by his brothers. So chapter 37 to verses 5 to 11, nagkaroon siya ng panaginip. He was hated actually because at one time he reported to his father what the brothers is doing. And he have two dreams. Yung panaginip niya na kung saan ay yung mga shelves ay yumuko, no? Yung lahat sa kanya. The stars ay ganun din, no? Using the sun, the moon, and the stars, that he will be rise to prominent over his family. That is in verses 9 to 11. So dahil dito ay kinakwento niya, family is like that, no? They are very close, that the children are talking to each other. So the first dream is the binding shelves in the field, others shall bow down to Joseph's shelf. Then the second dream, the sun, moon, and the 11th star bow down before Joseph. Because of this, he was hated by his brothers. So dahil dito ay he was conspired to kill him. Verses 12 to 20. At one time, his father sent him to his brothers in the field. At nakita sa kanya ng mga kapatid, no? Dahil dito ay they're trying to kill him. But Reuben said no. Iwan na lang natin sa sa pit, sa butas. At anyway, dumaan yung mga merchant and they sold Joseph. But Joseph heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, "Let us not take his life." Reuben's father said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into the pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father's house." So babalikan sa ni Joseph, another ni Reuben. Reuben is the eldest. But afterward, in verses 25 to 30, they sold him to the Ishmaelites, while Reuben grieved at not finding him. So, ginawa nila, yung coat niya ay lagyan niya ng dugo, they presented that to Jacob that he died. And Jacob mourned in verses after 31, verses 31 to 35. And then Joseph was brought to Egypt and sold to Potiphar. That is in chapter 36, verse 36. So there is a striking parallel here between the actions of Jacob's son in deceiving their father. They deceived their father, pinadala yung kanyang rainbow coat at sinabing ito ay yung kanyang ay namatay siya. No? Deceiving the father and Jacob on action. Some 30 years earlier when he deceived his father. So yun ang nangyari. No? Jacob deceived his father Isaac. So Jacob's son deceived Jacob. So you see the story there is a pattern. No? So it's time now that Jacob will be deceived by his son. So Jacob has deliberately deceived Isaac into giving him the blessing. Remember, narinig ng nanay niya si Rebecca na inuutusan ni Jacob yung kapatid niya na mag-hunting. So si Rebecca naghanda ng beef soup. The articles of clothing used in a deception. Jacob wrapped his arm and his head in wool to stimulate the hairy arms and back of Esau. So dito sa part of Jacob, ganun din, the articles of clothing in use in a deception. The brother dipped Joseph's tunic in blood to stimulate Joseph Thorn's body. So Jacob has deceived his father with the skin of dead goat. Jacob's son deceived him with the blood of a dead goat. So, nakita natin yung parallel. So the place of providence, Joseph has happened to be sent to meet his brother. A man just happened to have heard the brothers moving plans. Reuben just happened to intervene. And then there's happened to be the caravan of Ishmaelite just happened alone. So the place of providence, they just happened to go to Egypt. So the plan of God that they will be a slave for so many years in Egypt. Now the plan of God ay unti-unting na-reveal sa atin. No? So Joseph and Jesus Christ have a parallel too. No? So Joseph was beloved by his father. Joseph was beloved of the father. He was hated by his brothers and they plotted to murder him. He was hated by his brethren, the Israelites, and they plotted to murder him. He was sold for 20 shekels of silver by Judah, Joseph. And he was sold for 30 pieces of silver by Judas. And so, chapter 38. No? So he was, while traveling to Egypt, there is an interlude, chapter 38. So the interlude about the trial of just cause in a Korah family. This is the family of Jacob. Let me see that. Yan dito na. Nahanap ko yung aking notes. 38. So when Judah failed to ensure the levirate rights of his daughter-in-law, Tamar, she deceived him into having sexual with her by being a prostitute, and thereby championed his right to be the mothers of Judah's children, the younger of which displaced the older in unusual birth, no? Chapter 38. And so so chapter 38, ito yung interlude in the life of Joseph. So dito, Judah may take a Canaanite wife. Judah arranged the Canaanite wife for his children, for his son. Then the death of Judah's sons, Tamar, and the quiz for the year. So, maganda rin kwento ni Tamar, ano? Dito, ano? So, si Tamar ay pinangakuan ni Judah na he give his son as his husband. She deceived him by acting like a prostitute, thereby conceived him a son. No? Kunyari, hindi niya tinupad yung kanyang pangako kay Judah, kay Tamar. So si Tamar nagpakulway siyang what do you call this, prostitute, no? At dahil dito ay nakita sa ni Judah. So sabi niya, I will give you animals, flock of animals. And Tamar said, so habang wala yung mga animals, meron kang ibibigay sa akin as the token of your promises. No? So meron siyang binigay. At hindi niya alam na ito yung kanyang what do you call that? His the daughter-in-law. At nanganak si Tamar, no? Ng twin. At nung nanganak ito ay nangyari din doon sa pangyari doon kay Joseph, no? Lumitaw yung unang kamay, no? Si Zerah. Zerah hands appeared first. So Paris was actually the born first. No? So yung pangalawa naging prominent. The story, the patterns of the story are the same. No? Yung pangalawa at naging prominent. No? Dito rin sa the 12 son of Jacob, nakikita natin si Joseph. No? But then at the end of the story, it was Judah who was blessed to be the bearer of the promised seed, not actually Joseph, because Judah actually is second to Reuben, no? And the pattern is there. It's always the second son who become the prominent son. So chapter 39, Joseph arrived in Egypt. And so here, there is an abundant blessing and unjust suffering. Joseph show himself to be a man of integrity who refused to sin against his masters, against God and his master, and who continued to be God's servant by speaking forth God interpretations of the dream. Dito naman, he became the interpreters of the dream. So Joseph brought to ito yung outline ng chapter 39. No? Joseph was brought to by binilisan ni Potiphar and prepared in his family. No? The Lord prospered everything he did and blessed Potiphar. Position when Joseph become also in charge of them. Verses 1 to 6. Ano? Then his wife tempted Joseph, that Joseph did not bow down to the temptations of the wife, and he was accused by Potiphar wives, and then he was put to prison. He cast to prison in verse 20. But the Lord blessed him. So the Lord was with Joseph in prison and dealt with him in loyal love and causing him to prosper. So that the warden, nakita ng warden ito, no? He is a man of God, no? And he's a good person. And everything in his care was binigay ng naman ng warden. No? Siya naman ang namahala. No? You see, the pattern is always become a manager. Meron siyang training. Ano? He was trained to a bigger things to be happen in his life, to become the second in command, the prime minister of Egypt. But along the way, he was actually trained with that, with the family of Potiphar and a bigger now, a prison. And so here, Jacob deceived Isaac, the 10 sons deceived Jacob, Tamar deceived Judah. Ito yung nangyari sa nakaraan. No? Anyway, there's always a goat. No? So Tamar take the place of Judah, the seal, the cord, and the staff.
Bakit,
Nung he was
Brother Bert, bakit sabi mo nagiging second favorite si Judah, where in fact he commit adultery with Tamar? Sabi mo kanina na nagiging second favorite si Judah.
Hindi, sabi ko kanina, sabihin, nawala ako eh. Nasaan yung account ko na. Si Judah, actually, he became the bearer of the seed. Hindi siya naging paborito. He actually was the bearer of the seed instead of Joseph. Now, doon ang galing si Jesus Christ sa tribe of Judah. Hindi sa tribe ni Joseph.
Despite of the fact na nakakommit siya ng adultery kay Tamar.
Oh. He was blessed by his father, no? at the end sa chapter 49. Although Joseph was the prominent key in the story of the rest of the book of Genesis, but it was at the end, it was actually Judah, the second son in the family of what do you call that, of Jacob. So yan ang plano ng Diyos. He committed adultery. But actually, he was deceived by Tamar. No? Actually, Joseph said, well, kill that woman. But then at the end, pinalabas ni Tamar yung items, no, na kanyang ibinigay noong kay Tamar as a pledge of what he did before the promised payment. No?
Pero
Okay,
in fact, Brother Bert, si Judah nagsabi pa nga kay Unan na hindi sa abroad. Parang pinapalabas niya na magiging brother-in-law ni Tamar. Pero si Unan to, kapatid ni Sheila to eh. Diba? Pero parang nagsinungaling dito si Judah.
Hindi kasi hindi tinupad, no? Yung pangako niya kay Tamar actually. Kaya Tamar will actually make a decision to deceive his father-in-law so that for the purpose of the heir, kung sino yung magiging tagapagmana. So kaya sabi natin, there is something wrong with this family, you know, at this time. Okay, so Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, inasmuch I did not give her to my son Sheila. So dito makikita mo dito parang nagsisi na rin si Judah, no? Sa verse 26. So Tamar is the account of Canaanite who came into a covenant community, the Israelites, and who learned to value the heritage of the seeds of Abraham. Kasi ito yung the woman in the genealogy of Jesus. Tamar dresses and acts like a prostitute. Rahab is a prostitute. Ruth, a Moabite woman. Bathsheba, an adulterous woman. Mary is under the assumption that she bore a child out of wedlock. So, ito yung makikita natin sa genealogy ni Jesus. They were very important women in the life of the Messiah. So Genesis chapter, but it came about that he drew back his hand, and behold, his brother came out. Ito yung pinanganak, yung dalawang anak ni Tamar. What bits you made for yourself? So he was named Perez. Afterward, his brother came out, who had the secret trait on his hand, and his name was Pharaoh. So the prominent now is the second son. So the younger brother motive, Seth instead of Cain, Isaac instead of Ismael, Jacob instead of Esau, and Perez instead of Zerah, Ephraim instead of Manasseh. So we have the elder brother who given us his inheritance, or give up their inheritance. But it is the tradition of this family, of their descendants, that the elder brother is supposed to be will inherit. He will replace his father, but what happened is the second son become the prominent. So Judah and Joseph, there is a parallel too. Judah went to a foreigner's of his own will. Judah at Joseph taken to Egypt against his will. Sexual immorality went to his daughter-in-law, Tamar. So there is also a sexual morality, the seduction of the Potiphar's wife. So left his field and cord, binigay niya kay Tamar. Left his garment, Joseph. And falsely accuser, he accused Tamar, si Judah, no? That he was not true to her words. But Joseph was falsely accused. The son judged by God, Joseph blessed by God. The true accusations of a woman and the false accusations of a woman. So nakita natin yung pattern, no? So chapter 40, 39 and 40. So we know that in the prison, we have the example of unwavering faith. So we know that the two officials of the Pharaoh, the cupbearers, and the baker, have dreams in prison. And Joseph accurately interpreted the dream in chapter 40. So Joseph meet the cupbearer and the baker. So when the cupbearers and Joseph interpreted them, at the end, the prophecy, the dream fulfilled, and the other guy, the cupbearer, was restored to his post, and the baker was executed. But ito yung lagi sinabi ni Joseph sa kanila, huwag niyo akong kalimutan, no? Pag kayo may balik sa position. So the dream will fulfill 3 days later when the Pharaoh granted amnesty to the cupbearer but executed the baker just as Joseph had foretold. But the cupbearer forget to mention Joseph to the Pharaoh. So that is chapter 40. So chapter 41, ito yung outline of chapter 40, the chief cupbearer, butler, yung translation. And the bakers of Pharaoh being imprisoned, Joseph is charged with them. He interpreted the dreams in verses 5 to 19. They are accomplished according to his interpretation. Chapter 40, verse 20 to 22, the ingratitude of the cupbearer or the butler in forgetting Joseph, verse 23. So Genesis chapter 39 contains a story that looks from human perspective to be one of the defeat. No? Parang nangyari ay si Joseph ay naiwan, no? In perspective, supposed to be he was rewarded by the officials of the Pharaoh, but he remained in prison. Until, of course, nung nagkaroon ng panaginip yung Pharaoh itself. So the promise the seeming defeat, the supernatural fulfillment. So, promise to Abraham descendants of multitude. But seemingly defeat, they could not bear children. They were barren. Sarah was barren. But there is a supernatural fulfillment. A son is born in their old age. Jacob, to be given ruler over the land. But he became a fugitive in Haram. That is the place of his father-in-law, Laban. He returned with a great, while he was deceived by Laban to serve his daughter for 14 years, no? Leah and Rachel. Then the promise to Joseph, your family will bow down to you. But look at his life at the beginning. It seems it is seemingly defeat because he became a slave in the prison of a superpower foreign land. But he raised up to become the second in all of Egypt. Moses, you will lead your country out of bondage. But he was, from the beginning, he was rejected by the Israelites. And he killed his servant, an Egyptian. Then he became fugitive in Midian to his father-in-law. No? And then the supernatural fulfillment, he led Israel out of Egypt through the Red Sea, actually. But before that, we have the template. You know? Then Jesus, the kingdom of heaven, is at hand. He was seemingly defeated, crucified, dead, and buried, and his disciples scattered. But the supernatural fulfillment, he was resurrected, ascension, and giving of the Holy Spirit to spread the gospel to the end of the earth. So you see the pattern of the story of the book of Genesis and Exodus. So the Lord present. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became successful man. Verse 2, chapter 39. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. Potiphar saw it. The jailer, the warden, saw it. But the Lord was Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer or warden. The chief warden did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made him to prosper. According to chapter 39, verse 23. And so, chapter 41, the fulfillment of the destiny, how God controlled the nation to accomplish his program. After Joseph faithfully interpreted the two dreams of Pharaoh, God elevated Joseph to power and demonstrate his sovereignty and controlling the economic life of Egypt. Chapter 41. So here is the outline of chapter 41. Pharaoh has a two dream, verses 1 to 8, and the cupbearer remembered Joseph, and he told the Pharaoh. So Joseph interpreted the two dreams, chapter 41, verses 9 to 32. He gave Pharaoh counsel and is highly advanced, and he got married in chapter verses 33 to 45. Then the 7 years of plenty, no? Kasi yung kanyang interpretation, there will be 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. So he born a son, children, and the famine began in chapter 41, verses 53 to 57. So we know that the Pharaoh has a dream, two dreams. So. So that's the beginning of what will happen to the family of Jacob. So there is a famine, not only in Egypt, but actually throughout the land. And Jacob, the family is looking for food, and they went to Egypt. So here is some slides, some part of Genesis chapter 41. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it and said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph then answered the Pharaoh, saying, it is not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Now, as for the repeating of the dreams of Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about. That is what the words of Joseph to the Pharaoh. Now, let the Pharaoh look for a man. Now he interpreted the 7 years of abundance. So they're looking for a man to manage it. And the Pharaoh looked at the man, discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. So verse 34, let the Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him exact the fifth of the product of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. So he become rich actually, Then let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and let them guard it. And let the food become as a reserve of the land for 7 years of famine, which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. Then the Pharaoh said to this servant, can we find a man like this, in whom is a divine spirit? So the Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. And you shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall do homage. Only the throne I will be greater than you. So he is the second in command. So that is the chapter 41. The chapter 42 now, cycle number 2, Joseph now is a prominent person. the testing now of his brother. So through a series of 3 tests, Joseph examined his brother to see if they any more loyal to the family than they were with him. And upon the realization that they are, in that Judah offered his life for the sake of his father Jacob. So Joseph revealed himself to them, explaining that it was God's will that he will be in Egypt and is warmly united with them. That is chapter 42 or chapter 45, verse 15. So the first test, the first test actually set out for the second. So the awakening tension by putting his brother, pumunta sila doon sa no? Anyway, Jacob, pinapunta sila doon sa Egypt para maghanap ng pagkain. So the children went there except the youngest son, yung kapatid ni Joseph, si Benjamin. So he accused them of being a spy who come to Egypt for grain, and by keeping Simon hostage while others return to bring Benjamin back, because he is acting for his brother. Is your father still alive? Is your brother still alive? That's what he is asking for his brother. His brother to his mother, Rachel. So this is a good story, no? This is the outline of chapter 42. So Joseph sent his son to buy corn in Egypt, verses 1 to 15. They were accused by Joseph as spy and imprisoned there in 16 and 17. But at the end, they were set liberty. At ang ginawa na naman ni Joseph, Joseph to bring them a condition that they bring their brother. So naiwan ng isang kapatid doon, no, para balikan nila. So they have remorse for Joseph. Joseph saw it. Simon escaped for a plea. So Simon will be in prison, and the other brothers went back to the Jacob. So they returned with corn and their money. So their relation to Jacob, they told Jacob what happened, and he wanted to go back and go back for Simon, but Jacob refused to send Benjamin. But in the end of the day, when their food ubos na, kailangan lang mag-survive. Ano? So they are, by circumstances, they need to return to Egypt. So the first instance that has been attempt to cover up their dishonesty, notice that in this second report, there are numerous references to the accusations against their honesty. Their treatment of Joseph. They hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Chapter 35, verse 37, verse 4. Joseph treatment of them. The man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with them. So he is in authority. So their treatment of Joseph, they resented Joseph because of the evil report he gave against them. So Joseph, the man, the lords of the house, took us for spies of the country. They threw Joseph into the pit. Joseph have sent them thrown in prison. No? They took Joseph out of the pit and sold him into slavery. But what did Joseph did to them? Joseph took them out of the prison and keep only Simon as the hostage. So isa lang, ano? Parang si Joseph, isa si Joseph, ano? So they went back and reported a lie to their father. So they sent back to report the truth to their father. So the second test, the testing for jealousy, after the impassioned dialogue with Joseph about taking Benjamin, the brother brought Benjamin to Egypt. When they attempted to repay the money for their son, they received gracious and peaceful treatment from Joseph, which include lavish favoritisms of Benjamin over the elder brother. So, nakita na nila sa Egypt actually, no? Kung paano ginawa, paano tratuhin ni Joseph yung kanyang kapatid. Let me see that to go very far. So outline to 43. Okay, so that is chapter 43. So here is the outline of chapter 43. So Jacob is hardly persuaded to send Benjamin. So, but anyway, they allow him to bring their brothers. No? But the second meeting, Joseph entertained his brother. So there is an intense, an emotional meeting. No? So if you kung basahin niyo yan, Joseph actually cried. No? So they discovered their fear to the stewards, and Joseph made them a feast. So the second meeting, the second test, in the prepared banquet for his brother, Joseph seated the men in orders of their birth and favor Benjamin and over others with extra serving. Yeah. Meron siyang additional rice. si 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 Josie, si Benjamin. So makikita natin actually mayroong tatlong seating yan, no? Yung upuan ng mga kapatid ni Joseph, yung mga foreigners, then the Egyptians. So, but dito, he arranged them according to their birth. No? Yung panganay to bunso. So maybe they are, I don't know, they were amazed at why they didn't know how it was. You know? Bakit ganun ang nangyari, no? He knows who is the eldest. So the third, the testing, okay. So so eating a meal, okay. So the second test, So the eating a meals with someone in that culture means that you are at peace with the person with whom you are eating. So actually the gathering is a part of tradition that Joseph now forgiven them. It was a guarantee of safety. That is why the Messianic prophecy that my close friend in whom I trusted who ate my bread has lifted up his heel against me is so striking. So in Psalms chapter 41. As we look at this meal, we are reminded how the Father spread out the meal for us. Like the brothers of Joseph, we are also undeserving. We come only because of the grace of the givers of the meal, the Lord's Supper. So the brothers' treatment of Joseph, they were killed an animal to use his blood as ruse to deceive their father into thinking of Joseph was dead. Joseph, he ordered animal and killed and made ready for the meal for his brothers. So they throw him into the pit, then sat down to eat. But here, Joseph invited them into his home to have dinner with him. They have sold Joseph into slavery. Joseph treatment to them. He had made them into honored guests in his house. So this is a picture of grace. Yet grace given does not necessarily mean that grace is understood or accepted. No? Actually, they fear, they misunderstood the actions of Joseph. Joseph has graciously invited them to a dinner that they did not earn and which they did not deserve. But the brothers are waiting for something bad happen. They are certain this is merely a ruse, that there are sinister motives behind this offer. So they are expecting bad things will happen to them because Joseph actually policing mamaya pa yun. No? The third test, the consummation, that is chapter 44. The testing for loyalty, having forced the brothers to bring Benjamin down to Egypt. So Joseph tested the concern for him by framing the lads and blaming him to taking the cup. No, nilagay ni Joseph yung cup doon, yung silver cup doon sa gamit ni Benjamin, accusing the brothers of stealing it. And all which confronted brothers to acknowledge that God was finding out their sin against Joseph. And Joseph enters a sorry plea on Joseph's behalf. So si Judah, no? Si Judah ang namuno dito. No? So Joseph test both prompted the brethren to acknowledge that God found out their iniquity and examined their brother concern for Benjamin. So, anong nangyari? Parang naalala nila si Joseph. Ano? Kasi si Benjamin kapatid ni Joseph. Yung ginawa nila kay Joseph, ganito rin nangyari. No? Para bang they have promised their father that Benjamin went back alive because Joseph already died. Assuming, yun ang kanilang assumption na matay na si Joseph. Wala na si Joseph. So, letter A, verse chapter 44, ito yung outline. When Joseph tested his brother concerning Benjamin, the brother acknowledged that God has found out their iniquity and the evil done to Joseph. So the test, Joseph tested them by placing his silver cup in Benjamin's sack and accusing his brother of stealing it. The response, Joseph test, elicit and the defensive and unified response from the brother. Actually, Judah said, well, take me instead this brother, because they said they promised our father that this brother should return alive. So there is now the substitution. Judah explained that Jacob will die in sorrow if Benjamin did not return and offer himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. This is a pattern of substitution, and that is happened also on the cross when Christ substitute us for our sin. To the exposures of heart. So Joseph tests both prompted the brother to acknowledge that God has found out their iniquity and examine the brother concern for Benjamin by declaring him to be the slave, si Joseph, si Judah. The intercessor, Judah, approached Joseph as the intercessor and recalled their first meeting with him. So Judah recounted how they told their brothers that they could not return to Egypt without Benjamin, and reported Jacob anxiety over his favorite son. The substitution, Judah explained that Jacob will die in sorrow. And that is what I mentioned already. So, number 4, the aftermath. In bursts of unrestrainable emotion, Joseph revealed his identity to his brother, assuring them that it was God's sovereign purpose in sending him to Egypt, and instructed them to bring his father to Egypt, and then was warmly united with his brother. Chapter 25 is the result that Joseph emotionally revealed himself to his brother. So nakita ni Joseph that his brother actually repented of what he did to him, because they protected his brother, Benjamin. So there is a reconciliation. They were united in chapter 45, verses 14 to 15. So Joseph, ito yung outline, Joseph emotionally revealed himself. When Joseph could no longer restrain himself, he revealed his identity to his brothers and assured them that it was God's sovereign purpose to send him to Egypt, verses 1 to 8. And verses 9 to 13, Joseph instructed his brother to inform his father of all his glory in Egypt and bring Jacob to Egypt so that the whole family could dwell in security with ample provision. So there is a reconciliation, verses 14 to 15. So, the chapter 45 to chapter 50, it is the transitional chapter to Exodus. This introduces para sa introduction of what will happen to Egypt, in the book of Exodus. So the time of patriarch of Israel closed with Jacob moving to Egypt. In fulfillment of the prophecy of God, they will be slaves in a foreign land. So Egypt, we moved to Egypt with God's approval to be united with his son, with Joseph wisely making provision for Israel and Egypt, with Jacob affirming the certainty in the futures of God's promises, and with Joseph confirming the promises by burying his son in the land and comforting his brother before he died. So verses 45 to chapter 46, a part of 45 and a whole of 46 is the moving of Israel to Egypt. So when brother brought news of Joseph's survival and prosperity in Egypt, Israel went to the United with Sano. So makikita niyo yung doon, no? How Jacob will believe them that Joseph actually alive. Read that now. So Israel, Jacob decided to see Joseph after their brother returned to Canaan to tell of Joseph's survival and prosperity of Egypt. So Israel decided to journey to Egypt to see his beloved son. God confirmed Jacob or Israel. So when Israel stopped on the way to worship at Beersheba, the Lord spoke to him in a night vision, sanctioning his departure, confirming the promises, and assuring him of the Lord continued presence and blessing on his family. That is chapter 46, verse 17. Then chapter the settlement in Egypt, verse 8 to 27, chapter 46. So all of the descendants of Israel's household were 70 in all, settled in the land of Egypt. So there is a reunification. Israel came to Egypt, where he was reunited with his exalted son, the favorite son, Joseph. Chapter 46, 28 to 30. So chapter 46, verses 31 to chapter 47, verse 27. Joseph, by wisdom king read, Joseph acted wisely and presented his family to Pharaoh so that they received the best of the land of Pharaoh, whom Jacob blessed and returned. And then by wisdom Joseph bought almost all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, while serving the lives of the Egyptians and preserving Israel's prosperity in Goshen. So doon sila sa nilagay sa Goshen na kung saan is the best land of Egypt. The verses 47, chapter 47, verse 20 to chapter 48, verse 22. Faith that learned the ways of God. Jacob believed that God's promises to him will be certain, even after death, and so he worshiped God, proving his faith by demanding to be buried in the land of promise. So Jacob also believed that God's sovereignty gave him his blessing contrary to human expectation, proving his faith by blessing the younger Ephraim over the older brother Manasseh. So this is the shaping of the destiny, chapter 49. So this is the blessing his son Jacob foretold what will befall each of them and their descendant in the latter day. He disqualified Reuben for the birthright because of his son, or rather because of his sin. Simon and Levi because of their violence, but gave kingship to Judah, an extensive blessing to Joseph, while briefly declaring other son fortunes in life. Well, in other words, si Joseph hindi siya second, ano? Fourth actually. No? Ang fourth pala si Joseph, si Judah. No? So this is the outline of chapter 49, the blessing of Joseph, of the Jacob brother. So Jacob called his son, verses 1 and 2, together so that he could tell them what will befall them in the future, the later days. So Reuben lost his birthright because he acted presumably in the struggle for succession. That is what Jacob told them. Simon and Levi will be dispersed because of their fears and justified angers. No? Nangyari ito nung tinuli nila yung mga mas-trato kay Dayan. No? It was Simon and Joseph who did it. And Judah will receive the kinship and anticipate the time of abundance because he would act in valiance and praiseworthy manner. So this is what Joseph told them. Judah, your brother shall praise you. Your hand shall be in the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion whip. Oh, maybe. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lie down as a lion who dares rouse him up. So Zebulun will be dwell by the sea and the haven for ships. No? Merchant si Zebulun, no? Seafarer. Issachar will prefer ease and luxury for the hard work and freedom for which he was equipped. Dan, a small but would help his brother against oppression. God will be readed by marauding bands, but will fight back. Asher land will be so fertile that he could deliver delicacies to royalty. Itong part ng kwento doon ang dapat nilagay, no? The part ito na sinabi ni Jacob kay Joseph. The scripture shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. Naphtali will be swift messenger with the message of victory. Joseph will be prosper abundantly and when firstly attacked by his enemy, will be successful because of the help of God his Father, a blessing that gives Joseph position above others. So remember, no, doon sa panaginip ni Joseph, no, natupad yun, no? Kasi nag-bow down yung kanyang pamilya sa kanya when he became prominent in Egypt. Benjamin will be successful and shares his substance. So the conclusion, the epilogue, this is Jacob blessing on the 12 tribes of Israel. Number 5, chapter 50, chapter 49, verse 29 to chapter 50, verse 26. The death and fulfilled promise. In compliance with the instructions of Jacob, Joseph gained permission from Pharaoh to bury his father in Canaan land, the promised land, and respond to his brother's fear. Natakot sila kasi wala na yung tatay, baka sila they will be punished by Joseph. But Joseph assured them of his favor in spite of their past action, promising before he died that God's promises will be fulfilled. So chapter 50, ito yung outline, the burial arrangement in verse 1 to 3, Joseph petitioned to Joseph asking him to bury his father to the promised land, verses 4 and 6. The preparation for bury, to bury Jacob, verses 7 and 9. The mourning over Jacob, verses 10 to 12. The burial of Jacob, verses 12 to 14. Joseph petitioned him. This is where they asked him to spare them. But Joseph assured them that it is God's will that he will be sold to Egypt. So the burial arrangement and death of Joseph, verses 22 and 26. But Joseph said to them, to the petitions of his brother, do not be afraid, for am I in God's place. As for you, you mean evil against me, but God means it good in order to bring about his present result, to preserve many people alive, actually to preserve the seed, the promised seed. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones from here. So Joseph died at the age of 110, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. May embalmment na doon sa Egypt, no? So in the days of Joseph, so this is where the Niles, actually dito niya na kung nakikita niyo yung aking arrow dyan, dito niya yung Goshen, no? Malapit sa Nile. So this is the pyramids were already many hundreds of years. So the kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, this is history. No? So the old kingdom, dynasties, the pyramid era, the Middle Kingdom, the dynasty, that is about 1991 to 1786 BC, the era of biblical patriarch. So the new kingdom, dynasties, This is the era of Moses and the Exodus, the era where they no longer remember Joseph. The good deeds of Joseph, they could not remember it. That's why they become slave in Egypt. Joseph manipulated his brothers in order to bring the family back together, not just physically, but spiritually. Joseph manipulated his brothers in order to bring the family back. So as Moses writes this narrative, God is doing the same thing to Egypt. So this is what happened to the family of Joseph is also happened to the family of Israel. So God blessed them and able to return to the promised land. The promised land is the dwelling place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They are actually the owners of that land. They actually just trying to regain that land. That will be seen in the book of Exodus, the journey to the promised land. So this the end of our study of the book of Genesis. So, any question? Tapos na tayo. Tapos na tayo sa book of Genesis. Ano? There's a lot of things to learn from the book. You're reading the book of the story of Joseph. Every time that I read it, I cried of how Joseph forgiving his brothers. But then Joseph told them, it is God's plan that I will be sown in the land of Egypt to preserve the seed promise of God, to preserve the life of his brothers. They enter 70 to Egypt, but they will be out 600,000, only men counted. So they are about millions when they get out of Egypt. That will be in the book of Exodus. Yes, Mon.
So nakikita natin, napipicture natin yung mga kasalanan na ginawa ng mga kanyang mga kapatid.
Oh.
Nakikita natin. Pero si Joseph, hindi ito nagtanim siya ng galit sa kanyang kapatid. As a matter of fact, sila, they were spared from the famine. Dinala sila sa Egypt para doon na kumuha ng kanilang makakain. Bakit hindi sila dahil sa kagawa nila? Nagsinungaling pa nga sila sa tatay nila eh. Kay Pakbob na dahil pinakita nila yung dugo doon na parang pinapalabas nila na napatay na si Joseph. Nagsinungaling sila. Bakit hindi sila pinarusahan? Ito dahil sa mga consequence na ginawa nila. Ito mga kapatid ni Joseph. Wala bang either bibigyan mo lang sila ng lesson para matuto sila, di ba? Sa atin, pag may mga may mga consequences tayo na naranasan sa buhay natin, pag may mga pagkakamali tayo. Either magkakaroon ka ng sakit, magkakaroon ka ng kahinaan, may mga anxiety, worry, na nangyayari sa atin. Sila bakit? Dahil ano bang reason?
May planong Diyos sa kanila, no? Yung blessings, no, makikita sa chapter 49, no? The person responsible supposed to be, they were actually meron silang parusa din actually, no? So yung mga ibang kapatid, sunod-sunuran lang yun actually, no? So yung si Simon, si Reuben, that is his responsibility actually,
Yung panganay.
yung panganay, no? But he was acting, no? I mean, he did not, whatever happened, it is the plan of God. So without doing it, maybe other people will do it, no? So it is destined that Joseph will go to Egypt. Kasi yun ang prophecy, they will be a slave in the land of foreign land, or Egypt. And so, wala na tayong magawa doon, yun ang plano ng Diyos, no?
Di ba, sabi nga ni Joseph mismo sa kanyang mga kapatid na huwag niyong sisihin yung mga sarili, dahil Diyos ang nagdala sa akin dito.
Diyos ang nagdala sa kanya. Plano ng Diyos, no?
So, pero Robert, uso na para noon yung planting of evidence. Dahil si Benjamin, tinaniman ng mangkok na silver o gold ba yun? Pero kung
si Diyos,
tingnan natin mga istorya, ang senaryo, collateral lang yon. So,
fake news nyo, Brad. Romel, mga fake news.
Hindi talaga ang ginawa ni Kwan yun, no? Ginawa ni Joseph yun.
Ginawa talaga yun.
Ginawa niya, nilagay niya sa...
Parang may dahilan. Parang may dahilan na i-hold o i-detain si Kwan, maiwan.
Benjamin, no?
Parang mapwersa yung mga kapatid, nadalhin ang kanilang amang si Jacob.
But at the end, alam mo, nakita ni Joseph that his brothers actually protected his brother Benjamin. No? Because Judah said, well, take me in place of my brother.
Intercessor.
He was the substitute. So nakikita natin yung pattern of the Old Testament, the story there is things that will happen in the future. The substitution of Judah, the substitution of Jesus in our sin. No? So, sa tanungan ni meron bang consequences sa ginawa nila, no? So Moses did not record it. But then makikita natin yung buhay nila, no? Doon sa hindi na naging mabuti yung buhay nila. The family actually, what happened to Judah is an example of what happened in the family of Jacob. What happened to Dinah, who was abused by other people, and Levi and Simon, tinuli sila as they were deceived by they were manslaughter. There is a revenge there. That's why Jacob disqualified them to be the leaders or the bearers of the seed. Instead, Judah, who is the port. So at the end of the story, makikita natin yung ginawa ni Judah. No? He take responsibility that the three brothers did not need. So the bearer of the seed is Judah. Not even Joseph, Joseph was used by God to preserve the seed. But he is not the bearer of the seed. It is Judah. In human perspective, supposed to be, si Joseph kasi he gave a big contribution for saving the nation. That is different. This Judah. Okay, so tapos na tayo. Hope you enjoy.
Brother Bert, mayroon pa ako isang kwan dito. Brother Bert. After, hindi ba during the time, if si Abraham, tapos si Isaac, saka si Jacob, dyan, sa scheme of redemption, dyan dumaan sa kanila. Nutusan si Abraham, tapos anak.
Doon ang the promises. The promise of God in the Garden of Eden. The seed promise through Noah, then to Abraham, to Jacob, to Judah.
Makikita natin kapag sa kanilang line o sa redemption nila, sa line nila, kapag he will blessed gaya ng Isaac, he blessed Jacob. So nagiging maganda ang kahinatnan kasi yan na talaga ang plano ng Diyos sa kay Jacob. Dito makikita natin rin nung dinala niya ni Joseph si Jacob, nung nalaman niya na nabuhay si Joseph, no? Dinala niya doon sa Ehipto. Si Jacob, saka doon sa 47 yata, pinakilala yan sa Pero. Sa Pero. Tapos, si Jacob, he blessed Pero. Di ba sa 47 doon? And Jacob blessed Pero. Ngayon, bakit pag sinasabi na blessed, hindi ba kapag blessed, he will be maganda ang niya kahinatnan. Magiging ang pattern ng kaharian man ni Pero, magiging successful. Bakit in the long run, after na kay Moses na nagiging sila, naging suwail na rin niya after wala na si Pero doon, nagpalit-palit ng leader. Hindi na maganda ang pagtrata sa nila.
The new dynasty did not recognize anymore. Matagal yan eh. So, yung ginawa ni Joseph, nakalimutan na ng mga new leaders, no? The new Pero. Nakalimutan na nila yon. So, nakikita nila na while their country naghihirap, si Moses, rather the Israelites, they were abundant because of the land that the Pharaoh given to them. So para dumadami sila, no? So the fear that they will become the rulers of Egypt, they will put to slavery. We will learn that we will study that in Exodus.
Oh, Brother Ryan, hands up siya.
Oh, Brother Ryan.
Brother Ryan, no?
Po, gusto ko lang po, Brad, express yung appreciation ko sa pag-aaral natin ng Book of Genesis. Matagal ko na pong binabasa yung Genesis. Ngayon ko lang po na-appreciate ng sobra. Kasi napasin ko po from chapter 1, simula ng creation. Ngayon ko lang po napagtanto yung balance ng Book of Genesis, yung balance niya. Kasi nag-end siya mula sa paglalalang ng buhay, it ends up of the death of Joseph. Sa bandang dulo sa chapter 50. Ngayon ko lang napansin na ganun yung balancing pag-narrate ng story ng mga tao ng Panginoon Diyos. Maliban doon sa magandang istorya na binabanggit niyo po ngayon dito, katulad ng kay Joseph at iba pa, yung balancing pag-deliver ng Panginoon Diyos ng salita niya talaga, nandoon lagi. Yung consistency ng balance ng salita ng Panginoon Diyos na after mayroong buhay sa chapter 1 ng Genesis, at the end of the day, pinakita niya rin yung kahalagahan ng paghahanda na talagang meron ding kamatayan. Yung transitional period na nga po sa Exodus. So, na-appreciate ko po talaga, Brother Bert. Salamat po doon sa una. Ngayon ko na napansin niyo.
Gusto ko sana i-edit. Kasi napakaganda ng basahin yun, no? Napakaganda actually. You see the pattern.
Well, supposed to be, basahin natin lahat yun.
Oo. supposed to be actually before the class, nabasa nyo na, no? The whole book actually. And you will appreciate actually. Si Ryan, nabasa niya, na-appreciate niya yung lesson natin. No? So,
Okay.
Exodus has a good story too, no? So,
Next
Si
na ba
Joseph
sa
pala, Brother
Exodus?
Bert, doon nilibing sa Egypt.
Exodus, yes, next na, no?
O dahil binalsa mo pa nga si dyan.
Nakagawa na yata ng sermon si Brother Ramon dyan sa story ni Joseph.
Actually, yung outline
Nakuha mo
natin,
naman ang pangalan ko dyan. Salamat, Brother Openg. Parang
Sa scheme of redemption, lalabas naman.
may pasundot ka.
Yung scheme of redemption, yan mo talaga yung ganyan. Yan naman ang istorya eh.
Actually, ang presentation ko actually, kahit sa Bible study namin sa Tondo actually, parang sermon actually. No,
Pero
so,
Brad Bert, may tanong lang ako, Brad Bert.
oh,
Bakit ang sabay hindi natin pini-question yung ibinigay ng Diyos kay Joseph kung paano niya i-preserve yung buhay ng marami? Kasi yun talaga yung plano niya.